Hello and welcome to the Work for Change podcast. My name's Jean.
It's so weird not doing the thing.
I feel like I've outgrown it. I'm 30 now.
All
okay?
right, that's true.
I've outgrown it's Jaboy Jean spelled like Jean.
Yeah.
That was the last time
The last
anyone
time.
will ever hear it.
All right, sorry guys. Jean made a decision. He actually made a decision about 5 seconds before we did the last podcast.
Yep.
And I just was like, all right,
And that's why it was
that's
awkward.
fine.
That's why it was so awkward because we didn't have a way to like introduce it or bring it in yet. I'm still thinking about tweaking the intros to our podcast, but that's stuff you don't know about. And I'm waiting for the rebrand.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's John, his brother, also co-host of the Work for Change podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on episode number 82. Got a special one for you.
Why is it special?
Because we have my friend, not John's friend.
He's not my friend.
You guys will get that. Ethan Suplee. And so this is actually technically his second time on the podcast.
It's his first time knowing.
Yeah, it's his first
Kinda
time
like
knowing.
My first date with my wife.
Yep, that's true.
And second date.
That's actually true. So Ethan, I was able to go on his podcast, which is called American Glutton, which you guys should absolutely check out. We'll have it in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Really, really cool podcast. But he invited me up there to LA, and I did it literally like days before the quarantine all started. So I was able to hang out with him. I was on his podcast, and then I was recording a video that day, and then I was like, you know what? I think the audio from this could be really interesting. So we used that as a podcast, but this is his first time being on the podcast with him knowing it.
Yeah.
And it's a really good one.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we told him it sucked, that'd be a weird way to kick it off. No, but it was a great conversation. For people who don't know who Ethan is, he is an actor, now a podcaster. He talked about, we got the American Glutton podcast. That's what he is the host of. But you may know him from serious roles as like Seth Ryan in American History X. He was in Remember the Titans. He was in Boy Meets World, Frankie, one of the bullies.
He was in My Name is Earl.
My Name is Earl, Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, you can just keep on going on it.
He's like a serious actor. He's a well-known dude.
Yeah, exactly. And like the fact that you'll hear a story. He's got a pretty crazy story. A lot dealing with just like what his identity was as the big guy, losing weight, trying to be silent about it because of some terrible things the media said. Like, it's pretty crazy, but I feel like it's super encouraging for anyone who is on the journey or who has been on the journey, or if you're thinking about it. Like, it's something that can just relate. He's just a regular guy working through diet and fitness, and I think it's super cool.
Well, it's interesting because he's a regular guy, but he's also a movie star. And, like, obviously, I wouldn't say that in front of him because I know he'd be like, oh, no. But, like, this dude he's in front of cameras constantly, right? And so it's very interesting what that must be like, right? Losing weight when a lot of your identity as an actor, as we get into, is that. And so it's just a very, very interesting episode. He is a very interesting guy. He's a very nice guy. And I'm excited for you guys to listen to this one.
Yep. So here we go, episode 82. Hope you guys enjoy.
All right, Ethan, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, so the story with Ethan, I went on your podcast, and then we recorded like the shortest little clip. For my video.
It was painfully short, but even the podcast was painfully short.
Yeah, everything because there were like time restraints.
Yeah, so I don't think you know this, but this is your second time on our podcast.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So
that's right.
That audio, I used it for just like a little mini podcast. So you're actually a 2-time guest on the podcast
I'm
now.
a returning guest.
Returning guest. So we'll have your plaque sent to your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, man. Seriously, I messaged Ethan. And I was like, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? And he was like, yeah, I'll drive down. I was like, no. Like, you don't have to drive down. We could just do it on Zoom. And he was basically like, I'm driving down. Just tell me when.
Dude, if I can give my wife and kids like a legit excuse to leave the house, I take it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this was a glorious little side trip.
And you're in LA?
LA, yeah.
So it's like 2.5 hours, 2 hours, something like that. Yeah, not bad.
Well, right now the traffic's probably less, right?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's been times when it took me under 2 hours to drive to LA, and there's been times when it took me over 4 hours.
Yeah, it can be a nightmare.
I'm not the biggest fan of driving, and I was literally sitting in my car, screaming, not at anybody, but just frustrated.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be home because I was coming back from LA. But yeah, so going into this podcast, one thing that we really kind of were like talking about, like, what do we want to talk to Ethan about? Because there's so many things.
We came up with nothing.
Yeah, we came up with nothing.
We
So-
really hope you have a lot that you want to say.
Yeah. So what'd you eat for dinner last night?
Yeah.
No, but we were talking about your like early life, because obviously I do want to focus on the weight loss and all that stuff. It's super, obviously it's what I love to talk about.
Sure.
But like early life for you and acting, because I mean you are an actor, a very well accomplished actor. It's like so many movies and shows. Like, I didn't want to do this on your podcast, but I was like, there's so many movies and shows that I watched you on as a kid that I'm just like, it's still like surreal that we're friends. Like, it's so weird. But okay, I'll stop being a fanboy.
You're not friends. We're friends. We're friends. Yeah.
We're definitely friends. Okay,
Yeah.
we talk to each other on Instagram all the time.
All the time, nonstop.
Yeah.
Stop.
All right, I'll give you $50 afterwards for saying you're his friend.
I'll take it.
Gas money, you know. So getting into acting. Were you always like super interested in acting? And I'm kind of curious, like, what I was looking at your IMDb, and it said the first thing I saw was Tales of the Crypt.
Yeah.
Was that your first like real thing, or?
My first professional job was Boy Meets World. Excuse me. And I don't know why they do this, but like, I think because Boy Meets World continued on after, or it ended after Tales of the Crypt, so then it comes later sequentially, but or maybe Tales of the Crypt started before Boy Meets World.
Yeah,
or
I think
something
that's
like
what
that.
it said. Like on IMDb, it said like Tales of the Crypt, because I think it started in '94.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was under Boy Meets World, which I
Yeah.
think started after that.
I guess. However, that's where I did Boy Meets World first, and then in there did Tales from the Crypt, which was an awesome job to do, because it was, you know, kind of in the same way that like the current iteration of Twilight Zone is all like cool people. Tales from the Crypt was cool people. So to be like a guy who had done an episode of Boy Meets World only and go on Tales from the Crypt, it was like a big deal.
That show, I loved that show. Like, you put that next to Goosebumps, and
Yeah.
I was like,
I was scared of that show.
Yeah,
as a child. Like I was
I love-
legitimately like the host or whatever you would call him. I forget
that
what his-
little like
The dead creature
demon
guy.
thing. Yeah.
I was like legit. I was the kid that like acted like I really liked it, but in reality, I was just like, I don't really want to watch this.
Probably
Like, I'm
probably,
scared.
like, made you watch it, and my
Yeah.
mom would be like, "Why do you like this show?" She's like, "I'm raising like a little demon." Because I'm like, I love that show.
Yeah.
But
That's funny
Yeah.
that you bring that up, because this is so off topic, but me and John and we all used to go to church, right? At like this really small, like conservative church, and they did like a Halloween service, and like all the kids came dressed up as like very regular things. We came like straight up demons. Like we had like blood, and I just remember all the older just like people just looking at us like,
okay,
why would you let them come here like this?
Right.
It was so funny.
yeah,
At
good times.
church.
It was terrible.
Anyway, so
Boy Meets World was first, and I didn't have. I guess I had a weird or. My parents went to college and majored in drama at a dramatic college in Pittsburgh called Carnegie Mellon, which had a huge drama program, and they met doing a play. And so my childhood, I had cats named Stanley and Stella, which they met doing A Streetcar Named Desire, and they played Stanley and Stella, and so it was talked about quite a bit. They didn't act once I was born, but they talked about theater a lot, and then my mom would always like direct the school show at my school, and so I was interested in those ways. But as far as like being a professional actor, I never thought that was like a realistic thing until I met a kid who was a professional actor.
Okay.
And he did a bunch of episodes of the show called The Wonder Years. And for me, it was just that, like, he got to, like, leave school. You know what I mean?
heck yeah, yep.
There would be weeks where he was just not there, and I'd be like, where were you? And he was like, I was at work making a TV show.
He's in elementary school.
Yeah.
He's showing up with a briefcase.
Yeah, which was so cool. You get to ditch school and, like,
Yeah.
play make-believe. That
Heck yeah.
seemed like the most incredible job ever. And that was really what I just wanted to not go to school anymore.
Uh-huh. Well, I tried to do that, but my way of getting out of school was itching my eyes really hard and then acting like I had pink eye.
Yeah.
It worked every time because they had to send you home.
Right.
It didn't result in a career for me, though. It didn't work.
No, he's not a professional pink eye
person,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, but if they have that, I probably would have been.
Right. That would be your thing.
I did try that once, and the teacher was like, "I saw you in the corner rubbing your eye." I'm like, "Dang it!"
Yeah.
Didn't work for me.
It itches.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so the one time I actually did get sent home for doing it, I remember I was in the nurse's office because I told my teacher I feel like my eye is itchy, and I knew pink eye is a big thing. So they sent me to the nurse's office, and then I went to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and my eye was not as pink anymore because had stopped rubbing it. So then I just rubbed it really hard in the bathroom, and then I walked out, and the nurse was like, "Oh, we have to call your mom."
Yeah.
And then sadly, my mom worked like 20 miles away, and she had to come pick me up. She was not happy about that.
Right. And
Not
your
happy
eyes
about
weren't
that.
pink when
No,
she
they
got
weren't.
there.
She knew 100%. I just didn't want to
She
be
made
there.
him pink
Yeah.
afterwards. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not funny. You can't say that.
Okay, so that's the acting, and then obviously you've had so many roles, countless roles. Do you know how many roles you've had? Like, could
idea.
you count? It's literally countless. You couldn't
a
count.
lot.
If you
Literally,
wanted to.
it's impossible.
If you wanted to, you couldn't count it. I was kind of like reading up and stuff like that, and in one of the articles it talked about you kind of being self-conscious about your weight at a pretty early age.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah. No.
Never
It's
heard of that.
completely off topic again. I think up until the age of 5, I had no idea that there was anything different or quote unquote wrong with me and my weight. It wasn't an issue. Like, I had no perception of it. And I went to visit my grandparents, and they had a big reaction, like, "Oh my God, you've let this kid go!" Like,
At 5 years old.
at 5 years old. And
Wow.
like, listen, I could certainly go to a school today and go like, "Wow, there's some really big 5-year-olds." I wasn't that big. Like, I had chubby cheeks and some baby fat.
Yeah.
And on this visit with them, there was so much attention put on my body that I kind of, I just, from then on, I would wear a shirt at the beach and I felt uncomfortable about my body. But yeah, and then by the time I was 10, I was 200 pounds, and I was legit overweight at that point.
It's crazy hearing you say that, like, because it's like Pandora's box has been opened. You know, this thing that you literally, as a 5-year-old, you're not even thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And I would say I probably had a similar experience. I can't pinpoint that exact moment, but like hearing you say I was wearing shirts at the beach, there's a picture that we have from a really, really long time ago. I am certainly under 10 years old. And I'm really young. I have like bleached hair. We used to do a bunch of stuff to our hair. But everyone else doesn't have a shirt on. They're at the beach. I am wearing a humongous shirt at like under 10 years old, being super like self-conscious about my body, when in reality, like, I mean, I was a pretty big kid. Like, I gained weight my whole life, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh. And even if it's a kid, like, no one's like, I don't look at kids and I'm like, oh, they have their shirt off. That's gross. Like,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, however old I was, 8 to 10 years old, I was like, I'm not going in the water with the shirt off.
Yeah.
It was not going to happen.
No, I remember, like, even with a shirt on, being frozen on the beach, like, just the distance to get to my friends, I would feel like people were watching me, and I would want to just sit there and want to play with them, but at the same time, like, and then there's something about once you get to the group, you're protected by the group, and you disappear within it. You know, that I had all of that as a kid. It's a terrible, I think, a terrible thing. I do think, you know, that I didn't get my act together really until I had somebody who genuinely didn't care about my body in a bizarre way, where, like, when I finally talked to her about it, it was almost like, I got to tell you a secret. Yeah. I'm 500 pounds. You know what I mean? Where I really was struggling with this thing, like, she doesn't know.
You're talking about your wife,
My
right?
wife. Yeah. And it felt like if I let her see me in this way, how could she ever look at me differently? Like, let's just keep going with this. Like, she's not mentioning it, and she doesn't care.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining her like doing laundry or something and being like, just like folding these huge shirts.
I felt like I tricked her, you know? Yeah. Like I was like, she's delusional. I don't want to end this delusion. I really like this girl.
You're like, I have been wearing a lot of black, so she probably hasn't noticed.
Yeah. So there was some part of me that was really helpful in me changing, you know, like really having somebody who didn't care. And then when I said, like, I want to be healthier, she cared about that a lot. I want to change because there's certain things I can't do that I want to be able to do. She cared about that. She like, oh, you want to go hike with me? Yeah. Okay. Well, here's what we're going to do. That was helpful. So I run into these weird, very complicated mental ideas right now with, a lot, and we talked about this a little bit, a lot of the healthy at every size movement. And I go, like, there is something good about a kid not being introverted at a young age and having to wear a t-shirt and feeling petrified about walking across an empty beach because people are going to look at him. That sucks. Yeah. You know, if we can get away from that. But I say that while at the same time, I'm like, I think it was all in me and some dynamics within my family, but I don't know that it's necessarily society's responsibility to change. Do you know what I mean? It's very complicated.
Trust me, man. Like, these are all questions I've asked myself, and I don't have an answer for it. Like, what you're saying, at least what I'm hearing, it's like, of course, we don't want kids to feel shame, and we don't want them to be doing what we were doing at 9 years old at the beach with their shirt on. But at the same time, at least what I feel like, it's like, we can't go all the way to the other side and be like, whatever size you are is fine.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's fine as far as saying, like, you're still a good person and you're not less than anyone.
Yeah.
But there are some health issues that you will encounter as you get older if you continue down this road.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get mixed up when they're trying to, maybe that's their message. They're only focused on, oh, look at the fat rolls you have, or look at the fat you have, you know, and then people are just like, I feel bad about it, I'm going to hide it.
Yeah.
You know, like, I remember when I was in 9th grade, we had to do gym, and one of the things you had to do was swim.
Right.
I swam with the shirt on the whole time. Like, who am I tricking? The shirt is sticking to my body. By the way,
I was in white shirts a lot of the times too, thinking, like, this is my shield. You can't see through this. Yeah. Meanwhile.
And so, I mean, with health at every size, man, it's so complicated. And it's like, I've had so many discussions with so many different people that are for it, people that are, like, really, really against it. I mean, I fall in the middle, obviously more towards the, you know, it can be dangerous, so we need to be kind of careful.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is really, like, I'm really curious about, you know, being an actor, and, like, you know, you sign these contracts that might have, like, you know, so when you're at your biggest, because I'm thinking, if I was a really big kid and then I'm doing an acting role and somehow in the contract it says there's a scene you have to have your shirt off. Like, did you ever have anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Well, and here's the very tricky thing. As you know, which I look to you with a lot of admiration because I feel like you've beaten it. And I also think, and I talked about this a little bit on Kevin Smith's podcast, Smodcast, but because I do think we construct these ideas ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, I like ice cream. However you feel about ice cream cannot affect my feeling about ice cream at all. You want to sit here and tell me ice cream is evil?
Yeah.
I'm still sorry.
It's so evil, but I'm going to eat a pint after this.
I'm going to like ice cream at the end of that. So when it gets into something we associate with ourselves, it becomes different, and somehow your point of view can become damaging, and I just go like, okay, that's too much. Let's just deal with ourselves. But I had lost some weight, and was maybe even more inhibited about my body. Like, I still am uncomfortable with my body. I don't want to take my shirt off, and I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my life. So I still have a lot of those feelings. That said, I went to do a Martin Scorsese movie, and in the contract there were full nudity clauses, and my agents were like, "This is in the contract. You have to sign." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And then
then it came up.
Then my lawyer called me and said, "Hey, we just want you to know, like, we checked with them. This is an enforceable thing. Like, they have reiterated a few times, you have to be okay with total nudity." And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine." They were like, "What are you talking about? You won't take your shirt off, and now you're saying you'll be totally nude." And I was like, "Well, it's Scorsese, so like, you know, you take your clothes off. I'll drop my pants for Scorsese if that's what he wants."
Me too.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Still
it's
waiting for him
Scorsese. He's the greatest. You can't beat Scorsese.
Yeah,
So, okay.
Sure.
When it got to it, like a week before, and we started like roughly blocking the scenes in which that clause would go into effect, I panicked.
Yeah, I mean, he's just sweating.
Yeah, and started going like, I gotta come up with a way to keep my clothes on. And I did. I started pitching ideas like, amidst this insane orgy, what if I'm asleep?
Yeah.
Or I'm playing cards with somebody, or I'm reading a book. Like, these things would be hilarious in the midst of this debaucherous chaos, right? And he liked those ideas, and so we shot those, and I didn't have to take my clothes off. But I said I would, and I guess I ultimately would have, but I would have made Scorsese twist my arm a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
maybe buy me dinner.
So, what I mean, for me, obviously, we struggle with the same thing, right? Lose skin from losing a lot of weight. For me, I would be like, okay, I'll do it, but people are going to be very confused. Like, right? Like, if they're going to see, they're seeing regular, like, people that don't have loose skin, and there's a guy that has loose skin, are you going to explain it in the script, or is it just going to be there? Like, that's what I would be concerned about, because I'm like, this is, like, if you're really concerned about this scene and you want things to go a certain way,
Yeah.
my body is going to take that away. Like,
Yeah.
it just is.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have probably said. I'm like, I don't mind doing it, but just understand, like, if you don't explain why,
It's gonna be weird.
People are going to be very confused.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me.
I mean, I think of your confidence, and I try to put myself through the mental exercise it must take, and I imagine the first time is terrifying.
Yeah.
And then it just gets easier and easier, and it becomes like not a thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what I imagine, and so I go like, that's all it takes, and we can apply that to thought in any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I really do admire your ability to do that.
Yeah.
But I also have a lot of cognitive dissonance, and look at like guys like Jack Black, who takes his shirt off, and then I look at him and I go like, but his belly's perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
It's not.
It's just perfectly
loose
round
and
and-
jiggly.
yeah.
It's almost taut. He almost has a muscular
Right.
gut. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I just go like, why couldn't I just been his version of fat? You know. But I think I could have done that about anything. If I looked
Yeah.
like him, I would have been the guy going like,
Why can't I look like this guy?
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, but with the loose skin, man, like, for me, I always say I don't expect people to be as comfortable with it as I am. Like, without a doubt, it's become part of me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's become part of, I hate to say it like this because it sounds gross, but like part of my brand.
Yeah.
Like, I really am to a point now where I am comfortable with it, but I am fully aware that that is not a normal thing. You know?
Yeah, but but the thing is, it's really important that you do that, because it is a normal thing for anybody who loses weight.
Yeah.
I mean, or 99.9% of the people who lose weight. It's going to be
gonna
a
happen,
normal
yeah.
thing. And so if we have a bunch of people who want to lose weight, that's a thing that needs to be confronted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really important. So I just admire what you do. I
No,
really
thank
do.
you. I mean, I fully agree with that. And I think that, so I get not a lot of backlash, but I do get a good amount of backlash of people being like, oh, you talk about it too much, or you show it all the time.
I don't think so.
And what I tell myself, and because I really could care less about trying to prove to them that it's worth it, because it's not going to happen. They're going to think what they think. But what I tell myself is that, one, this is something I live with every single day. It's not like just something I pull out for videos and then I put it away, right? Like, it is a reality. And I know if it's a reality for me, just like you said, it is a reality for anyone that needs to lose a massive amount of weight.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And, everyone's going to have a different amount. It's going to be different. But if people can see how confident I am with mine, even if, they're not willing to take their shirt off, at least with their shirt on, they're like, at least I don't feel like I'm a freak or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that sounds a little aggressive, but I know people feel like there's something wrong with them because of this 100% normal thing that happens if you lose a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just, I do see value in it, and I understand there are people that might think it's annoying, but I can almost guarantee that person is never going to have to deal with it because they've probably never been really overweight.
Yeah.
And so it's like that. I'm not making these videos for you.
I think it's also important for people who maybe haven't thought about that, you know what I mean, and are going into weight loss, or who are losing weight and going like, why is this, you know what I mean? Because when I was losing weight, I never thought like this is going to stay basically like this. This isn't going to go away. And then when I realized and started doing research, it was a bummer, and so it's something that needs to be confronted. I also have to get really into the fact that I'm never going to look the way I think I want to look. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of complexity here again.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that you see what I do and you're like really, you admire it and stuff, which I appreciate. But I think I really admire what you do because I imagine, like, I'm really confident in my skin, but I don't have these super HD, really, really high quality cameras pointed at me really ever, right? Like the highest quality camera is like a $1,200 camera that I have, and like I can decide where I want the angle to be from and all of that stuff. So I'm like, because I've thought about it first, I don't know why, but I'm like, man, if I was on a movie set and they were like filming me and say if they needed me to run, like I know that I'd be really uncomfortable with that. Like, do you ever deal with anything like that where it's like, you're like, I need to make sure that I have like my compression stuff or like anything like that?
I kind of gave up on that and just went like, so long as I'm dressed, any of that stuff is part of the game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I also have not watched anything I've done in a long time because I would watch stuff and I would go like,
oh, you'd be looking for it.
Oh my God, look at this. This is awful. And nobody else is doing that. You know what I mean? And so if nobody else is doing that, why am I doing that? And so I just realized like I'm not my own audience at all. So I can't. Because I'll do, and you can't, look, I think it's one thing if you're like a gal who, part of your thing is selling shampoo or I don't know, or your hair is part of your brand. And like, if you're having a bad hair day, like that's got to get fixed. You know what I mean? We're going to spend time making sure that aspect of you looks perfect and it's lit perfectly or whatever. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm just the guy there.
Yeah.
I'm never even the main focus. So for me to get super into anything like that, I think would just be a detraction from what we're trying to do. And so I don't like, as long as I am clothed, whatever the camera gets, it gets.
Interesting.
You guys both were talking about how you admire each other. But you guys aren't talking about how you admire me yet.
Well, we're friends.
Yeah. He doesn't like you.
We've just met.
So it's crazy. It's probably our shortest podcast episode ever. I gotta go.
John needs to go cry.
I need to go
in the corner.
cry. Yeah, I'm gonna go get pink eye for a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna go back and ask a question about acting and all that stuff.
Sure.
In another part of what I read in an article, everything I know about you is from an article.
Okay.
And from you guys, and when you were on our podcast.
Without your knowledge. When you tricked you into our podcast.
So they were talking about TMZ in 2011 did a post about how you lost 200 pounds.
Yeah.
It feels like, besides that, all of a sudden in 2020, you bust on the scene with American Glutton.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, a lot of like the tweets are like, holy crap, did you see? Like, like what the heck happened? Do you want to kind of explain from like
Like the sequence?
Yeah, like from 2011. And then also along that, I'm really interested in like the mindset of like, I'm not going to be the big guy anymore. Like when people are looking for, oh, we need a big guy to fill this role.
Yeah.
That's not going to be me anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like what was that mindset shift like? And then the sequence of events essentially from 2011 to American Glutton.
My Name is Earl ended 2009 and I became obsessed with cycling. Went to Europe to ride stages of the Tour de France during the Tour de France, like super obsessed cycling nerd. Participated in races around Southern California, got into track cycling and would ride in we have a couple of velodromes up in Los Angeles and was really, really into that. So much so that I did basically just that for 2 years. Pretended that I was so rich that I didn't ever have to work again.
Yeah.
And would ride my bike 8 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow.
And then my off day, I'd ride for 4 hours.
Yes.
And I lost a lot of weight and got, I'm 263 this morning.
Okay.
I was under 220 at that time.
And how tall are you?
6'1". And I was a similar body fat percentage as I am now, just, almost 50 pounds lighter, 40 plus pounds lighter.
Can I ask, what were you eating at that time? Because, I mean, you're expending a ton of energy.
Yeah, not a lot. Honestly,
Really?
not a lot. Yeah, I would do bizarre crash diets while riding. There's something really ingrained in cyclists about being as light as possible because it just makes you more efficient over distance and stuff. There would be periods of times where I would only allow myself to eat solid food while riding the bike, and I would have like, you have pockets in the back full of like energy bars and stuff.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yes, basically. And then off the bike, I would have like Carbolite, which was a frozen yogurt that was popular with no sugar in it 10 years ago. I don't even know if they make that anymore. I was not eating a lot, and it wasn't healthy. And around the time of TMZ, there were some, like TMZ saw me, and what was weird then is like the guy came up and talked to me, and they did this TMZ story, and then the guy who talked to me then went on Twitter and was like, I don't know what all the hoopla is about. He's still fat. And I was like,
jeez,
dude, I'm 13% body fat. What are you talking about? Like he was at like 30% body fat and he's calling me fat. And it was just like, I'm not going to win with him. And then there were a number of stories that like had paparazzi following me around, getting pictures of my loose skin on my legs. Man. And there was like the downside of weight loss stories. And I felt like really like, I can't win. Like I've done something, I've accomplished something.
Wow.
I'm not going to succeed with these people. So I didn't talk about it. At that point, I made the conscious decision not to talk about it.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. Not to cut you off, but like I'm just thinking of like when I showed my loose skin, it was my choice, right? And it was hard to do even then, right? And so to have like these like tabloid articles writing about this thing that obviously everyone struggles with, I just like, I'm like, I know you don't need my sympathy, but like that must have been,
it sucked,
horrible.
Yeah, it sucked, and like not necessarily similarly because it's on a much larger scale with what people are doing to Adele. I'm like, this is BS. You know what I mean? Like this girl accomplished something that she set out to accomplish.
Yeah.
We should only be acknowledging that. We shouldn't be like any negative opinion should be utterly ignored, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's what I kind of expected to happen with me. If anybody was going to comment on it, I thought it would be positive.
Yeah.
And then there was suddenly a bunch of negative stuff.
Crazy.
And so I just went like, not talking about it.
And this is like pre-body positivity being the name of the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
No, it wasn't even like, him losing weight makes it dangerous for overweight people. It wasnn''t even that. It was just
people being
he looks
mean.
like shit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Jeez.
He looks like crap. Crap. And then a couple years went by. I had a terrible bike accident. I started lifting weights. I found that I really loved lifting weights. Uh-huh. And I did some movies. My wife told me I had to go back to work and that I couldn't be a professional amateur cyclist. And and I realized at some point, like, oh, people like me as a bigger guy. And I made in 2013, 14, the decision, like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to get big again. And I continued to lift weights, but I ate a lot, and I went from just about 200 pounds to just about 400 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something that I wanted to talk about because this was you and Kevin on your podcast talked about this, and I was fascinated by that decision.
Yeah.
Because again, like growing up in like all these other movie roles, you were usually the big guy, right? Like that's kind of that was your thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you, but
No, it
like
was.
at least from what I remember,
Sure.
right? And then you lose the weight. And again, like I dealt with this on a totally smaller scale, but I thought, oh, I'm not gonna be the funny fat guy anymore.
Yeah.
Like, who am I gonna be? You know. And so for you, it was like literally your job to some capacity, right? And so did you notice like less jobs coming in, and then like that mindset of okay, I'm going to eat more. I would love to hear hear the moment that you decided, if you remember that, and then kind of like from there on.
Yeah, I can't. It wasn't like a drought of work. I did a movie with Scorsese. I did a movie like right after that, and I wasn't super thrilled with the opportunities for work weren't as many, as plentiful, and so I was like, I'm not riding my bike anymore. I'm now lifting weights. And like work feels weird, and I was kind of at a size that I wasn't even totally comfortable. I wanted to be bigger, and so I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to gain weight, and she was like, what does that mean? Like, what are we talking about? And I said, I don't know. I'm just not going to diet, and I'm going to, gain some weight. And she was like, okay. And I gained too much, and then I did a show that required that was looking for a bigger guy, and I did this show. And between season 1 and season 2, I realized, it was because I had to have surgery on my arm. I tore my bicep. I was lifting a lot of weights, and a simple bicep repair, which can not necessarily outpatient, but like not in a hospital. And then they weighed me, and they were like, "Oh no, you're above the weight." I was above 370 pounds, or whatever the weight is where you have to be in a hospital because it becomes dangerous to do surgery. And that's when my wife was like, this is not cool. You've gained too much weight. And it was kind of startling to me because I hadn't even been thinking about that. And I've got this job that I really liked that wanted a bigger guy, but I didn't have to be that big.
Yeah.
And so it was a show called Chance, which is actually a really good show. And you can see the weight loss between season 1 and season 2. I had this surgery, and I was like, that's it. I'm going to lose weight. And that has been kind of the steady progression. And I arrived today at a weight that I'm really happy with, where I go, if it affects my career as an actor, I don't care. I've been an actor for 25 years.
Yeah.
I worked with Martin Scorsese.
You have a very
I don't know what
great
else I have
career.
to do.
Yeah. Well, and like where you're at now, you're not a small guy.
No,
you know
I'm
what I mean.
big.
So you still, it's not like you can still get. I mean, not that you need my input, but like I could still see you as roles as where you're like an imposing person. You know, it's not like, oh, we need a skinny dude. Let's call Ethan up. You know what I mean?
That's not going to happen.
And so I mean, but again, like I think it's just interesting because there's not many jobs aside from maybe like, sports, like athletes, where their weight and their body is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Except for like acting, right? Like you see, I know you had Camille on your podcast. I'm sorry if I said his name wrong. Where he's going to be in a Marvel movie, and he got absolutely shredded.
Yeah.
And like just like all of those, like it's just interesting to me. Like the way your body looks in movies and stuff like that is very important.
Yeah.
Or like TV shows or anything. And so. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting when you brought it up.
Yeah.
So I didn't do enough research. I'm sorry, so I didn't watch Chance.
That's okay.
But,
That's okay. But it is a good show.
Yeah. I'll have to check it out because I want to see the
Yeah.
I want to see the change in between seasons.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm interested in.
It's not super drastic, but it's evident.
Yeah. Was there in Parks and Rec? Chris Pratt. About through the first like 4 seasons or something, he's like kind of steadily gaining weight. He's not overweight by any means, but he's like, but then
he's a chubby dude.
Yeah, in the 5th season, it was when he got the role for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So he like gets super shredded and like ripped.
Yeah.
And so Parks and Rec's kind of a silly show anyway. So they're like, "Dang, Andy, like you lost a lot of weight." And he's just like, "Yeah, I quit drinking beer." And they're like, "Wow, you must have been an alcoholic then." Like the amount of weight he lost. Was there like an answer to that in Chance, or was it just kind of like, oh,
No.
okay, just kind of?
Yeah, it wasn't because I was still big in the 2nd season. I wasn't as I think I went from like 375 to 315.
Okay.
315 is still big, you know. And that might even be a little bit of an exaggeration. It might have been 375 to 330 or something like that. But no, they didn't even mention it. They just said, "Oh, we can see your traps more now," which I thought, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Traps make you look tough.
That's his
Don't bring up my traps.
No,
I'm a trap guy too.
No, I have tiny traps. He has big traps.
Not right now.
Not anymore because
I haven't shrugged a barbell in 4 months.
So during quarantine, Jean decided he's not going to work out.
No. So we were talking before the podcast how it's
it's rough.
2 months I was pretty consistent, like pretty solid.
Yeah, he would work out once a week for 2 months.
No, I wasn't excited about it, but I was at least like my commitment was greater than my emotion for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The last month did not. I've maybe worked out once a week, and it's just like.
And it's because his wife literally makes him.
Yeah.
And he complains
Yeah.
before
Good
that
wife.
workout.
Yeah. And so it has not been this last month. Tomorrow, from when we're filming, tomorrow our gym opens, and I'm so excited.
You're gonna be coaching, right?
Yeah, I'll be coaching. So I'll be coaching my first ever class. I got my certificate in February to coach.
Yeah.
CrossFit Level 1. And so I got it mid-February. It takes about 2 weeks to get delivered to you.
Right.
So March 1st, let's say, I get my certificate, I get approved, everything. I'm so stoked. And they're like, okay, let's have you shadow some classes. So about March 1st or the 15th, I'm like shadowing classes. And I was like, all right, I'm getting ready to COVID. Yeah. And for like, so I got my certificate in February and I haven't been able to coach, and we're in June right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm finally going to coach my first class tomorrow. And I'm like,
okay,
stoked about it.
Do you have to demo everything? Like, can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
You've had so much time not working out. Are you going to hurt
He
yourself?
just tries to do a front squat with the barbell and just crumbles.
Yeah, people are just going to be like, we know what they are.
Yeah,
right.
Don't worry.
Yeah, we remember.
Yeah, as I cry in the corner.
We've all
again.
been working out through quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. It has been that last month was rough.
I agree.
Are any gyms opening up? Is LA like any more intense than, I don't know, like is it county by county? Is it state? Like
I read that your mayor gave some stat where he was like, we've only had 6 pure COVID deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not our mayor. Our mayor is like, everyone who's died in the last 2 years was COVID. You know, and like we're far underreporting. Like that's what we're dealing with. But I hear that gyms, I'm not going to hold my breath because I'd suffocate to death. But I hear that gyms are going to open in LA tomorrow too.
Yeah.
None of the gyms that I'm a member of have reached out to let me know that they're opening.
Yeah.
So I've been like sending emails and not gotten.
Come on, reply.
What's happening? I read that we're opening. You know,
they're like, not for you, buddy.
yeah. I have had bizarre dreams where I've woken up feeling great. Like, yeah, I broke into the gym last night and worked out. You know what I mean? And then I've gone like, no, I still have to work out today. That was a dream.
The worst.
Yeah.
I used to have dreams. This is totally different. When I was like in 5th grade. No, it's not that bad. I used to have dreams that I finished my homework, and then I would wake up and be like, dang it.
Yeah.
I still have homework.
Yeah, I have dreams that I finished editing a video that I put off until the morning, and I'm like, dang, I have to edit this.
Yeah.
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 My fault.
The struggle is real. So, a lot of times, have you ever gotten into powerlifting?
No.
Let me ask that. Okay. Because powerlifting, a common thing you hear is weight moves weight.
Right.
So I didn't know if there was any like in your desire to be like, you know what, I'm gonna gain some weight again. Was it kind of like I'm gonna hit some crazy PRs?
I did hit some crazy PRs, but I wasn't even. There was nothing scientific about what I was doing. I just went.
Increase the amount of cheeseburgers ate.
Yeah, that was really it. It was like I like doing weightlifting. I've found something I like doing that I can do in about an hour, a little bit more, but like that's an amount of time that I can dedicate to doing something. It doesn't take me 8 hours to lift weights, although I'm sure I could.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of had this thought that I'm going to continue exercising and gaining weight. And it wasn't even like I'm going to gain a bunch of muscle. Like that wasn't even part of it. It was just like I'm going to gain weight but stay kind of healthy. Had I understood the principles I understand today in 2016, I would have done it all differently. And I would probably have 20 pounds more muscle right now.
So let's get into that. Like what changed? You know, like why are you not necessarily why are you comfortable where you are now, but like what are the principles that you're doing to maintain a steady like weight, steady level of training at the gym, etc.? Like what changed in that time?
I did keto for a long time, and that became something that was very easy for me. And there were versions of it that were like BS versions and versions where it was healthy and I could lose weight doing it. But I would see, like, when I would get lazy and start eating hot dogs without buns, that my cholesterol would skyrocket and my blood wouldn't look as good. But I was losing weight and muscle at the same time. Not at the same rate, but for every 10 pounds of weight loss, 4 would be muscle. And I just wanted to stop that and got super into, like, how do bodybuilders do it? Because they have become masters at fat loss.
Yeah.
And so I started doing progressive overload, which is the kind of weightlifting they do. I never really cared about, like, when I bench pressed 405, it was just like, okay, that's what I can do. But I wasn't thinking about PRs or anything like that.
Same for me when I hit that.
Just like I didn't know like, oh, now you have to do more. You know what I mean? I just thought like that's what I can do, you know, and now I'll just go back to 315 and just do workout with that. And increased protein by a lot and decreased fat by a lot. And reintroduced carbohydrates, which I hadn't eaten in a long time. Basically the scariest week of my life, which
you shoot up, right?
I mean, 3 pounds a day weight gain on the scale. And I was just going like, how long I want to lose weight? How long am I going to keep doing this? Because if this keeps going, like I gained almost 10 pounds in 3 days.
Were you like working with someone and like kind of like expressing that feeling, or were you just kind of doing your own research online?
Doing my own. I read a couple of books.
Tough. That's tough, man.
And I was like, this is what I want. I want what these guys are talking about. I want targeted fat loss, not targeted specifically to a body part, but I don't want to lose water. I don't want to lose lean tissue, just fat. Like, how do I do that? Okay, here are the principles they've set forth. How do I maintain muscle? Progressive overload. Okay, so I have to do these things. Now I have to start, and starting was like, well, if I have no fat and I'm only going to be using protein as an energy, that's a crap energy source. Got to have carbohydrates. And, I understand. I even understood at the time, like, okay, your muscles are going to fill up with water.
Yeah.
This is not fat
But
gain.
it's still hard to see that scale go up. When your whole goal for years has been to see it go down.
For 18 years, I get on the scale, and if it's not coming down, I'm a failure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I 100% understand that. What I think is really interesting is, you're a guy, and I know that you're not like a hater of keto or anything like that.
Not at all.
No, yeah. I've listened to the podcast, but I think it's really interesting that I think a lot of people I don't want to say go wrong with keto, but where sometimes maybe they could get more out of just their weight loss in general is they see keto and they do it and they see results with it and they're like, this is it.
Yeah.
And then that's all they do. But then if they end up falling off, or if it becomes too hard for them, or they just can't do it anymore, they're like, well, I'm going to gain weight because I can't do keto anymore, right? Or they're just genuine, like, I can't eat the same food over and over again.
Yeah.
And then so they start to gain weight. And then so for you to be like, okay, this worked for me, but like for you, I'm not gaining the muscle that I want to gain. I was listening. I keep bringing up the podcast you just did with Kevin, but you were like, you were losing 4 pounds, but then 1 pound was muscle, and like you were just like 25%. Like you're just losing all this muscle. So then doing the research to be like, okay, this will help me lose weight. Counting macros or whatever it was exactly that you were doing, but then just being able to be like, okay, keto worked, but maybe it wasn't everything that I needed.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of people just don't do that.
Yeah. And I think that like when I was at my heaviest, that's kind of inconsequential. Like I'm not thinking of retaining muscle. And by the way, if I go back to like when I'm 540, I don't need all that lean tissue. You know what I mean? Like losing some of that lean tissue, I'm perfectly fine with. And I'm actually perfectly fine with getting some weight off really fast. I lost 80 pounds in 2 months. And that is actually weight I never even got close to gaining back. You know what I mean? I've never been anywhere near those numbers again. Not to say I haven't gone back up and down. I have a lot. But so it's just like, what's the goal? If the goal is like my feet hurt too much, I can't deal with how bad. Like I'm not a guy who complains a lot about pain. I actually don't think it's an attractive thing to do. But like to the point where I lay down at night going like, I don't know if I'll be able to walk tomorrow. That's a real
and that's when you were at your heaviest.
Disturbing thing to think. Yeah, and having insanely swollen ankles at the end of the day.
Can't
and now that could be like edema or congestive heart failure, like all these things that are wrapped into it, plus just 500 pounds sitting on your ankle, which isn't built to support that much weight. It was things like that I was like, I don't want that. You know what I mean? I wasn't even really thinking like I want to add 10 years to my life. It was more just like the discomfort and pain associated with just living, constantly pouring sweat, and constantly having too much clothes on to cover myself up. So it's like I can't win anyway.
Yeah.
My wife still harasses me about taking sweaters off and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm not hot, but I am.
No, it's crazy, man, because I remember when I was so my heaviest was, I always say it's 360. It might have been heavier. I just never saw a bigger number.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, if I just get to 300 pounds, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really felt like that because like, it could even be something as simple as I can't find clothes I like.
Yeah.
Like there was, I'm not a super stylish guy, but like there was like things I'd see and I'm like, that guy looks like he dresses nice, you know, watching TV or whatever. And I'm like, there's no way anyone makes anything that looks like that in my size.
Right.
It's like little things like that, man. But yeah, like losing just that initial weight can be so helpful. And then like, I've always said, like, people don't need... It's not like I'm telling everyone you need to become, like, a fitness model and get super lean. But it's like, if you want... And, like, you brought up when you were at your heaviest, you lost 80 pounds relatively fast. The bigger you are, the faster you can lose weight.
Yeah.
In a healthy way. And it's not super unhealthy, right? But you just have to understand you're not going to continue losing 80 pounds every 2 months, right? It's going to slow down. A lot of people, they see that, and they're like, okay, that's what I'm going to, my trajectory is all the way up here. And it's like, well, it's not going to happen like that, The
other thing that I utilize today really, really well and have for a couple of years now is maintenance periods and going like, here's 8 weeks. I'm not going to gain or lose weight. What's that like? You know what I mean? And it's not at the end of a goal. It's like putting off a goal, basically, to my mind. It was so hard in the beginning, but it really does show you what life not on a diet is like. It still requires just as much diligence and just as much thought as doing a diet. I had never done that before, so it'd be like I'm doing a diet, I get to a weight, now I'm not doing a diet, now I'm gaining weight again. That was kind of the cyclical event of my life. And then there was a point where I just thought, I'm keto forever because that's the only way. But even that, there was a little bit of insanity within myself because if I did keto but ate whatever I want, I was gaining weight. I would make giant sandwiches of meat and cheese and dip them in mayonnaise and gain weight and just think, well, it's keto. It's okay. I didn't really understand the principles at work 6, 7, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think it's what your goals are. When I was doing the show and I had to have surgery on my arm and I couldn't go to the normal place to have surgery. I had to go into the hospital, and I was kind of confronted with the fact that I've let my weight get really out of hand again. And I decided to lose weight again. I had the idea of like, I don't want to be thin because I wasn't comfortable. So I'm going to keep working out. I'm going to just be a big dude, but a healthier big dude.
Yeah.
And it took a while and research to like figure out the most optimal way to get there. But I think it's all goals, and I think goals can change too. I think that's perfectly valid.
So what's your goal? Like, where are you at right now? What's your goal?
Right now, my goal is
Survive quarantine.
Yeah, survive quarantine.
True.
The most boring zombie apocalypse of all time.
This movie sucks.
I mean, it's a real drag. I would like to get sub 10% body fat on a DEXA scan because I've done it with calipers and been 9% and just wanted to throw the calipers against the wall because I know they're lying to me.
You liar.
Yeah. And, see veins in my stomach and all of that. And I realized that will last for all of a day or two.
Yeah.
And
Take
then,
all the pictures you can.
Yeah. And then I want to do a massing phase that's done scientifically and won't involve cheeseburgers and pizza, and see what that's like. And then
Sounds terrible.
I think it's going to be cutting and massing and maintenance. I've really come to love these maintenance periods and dragging them out because I think every time I do that, I see more and more what life not on a diet is.
Yeah.
For me, it requires a lot of intention and thought, period. And while I say that, I'm only saying more that like I think every human has base instincts or desires, and we can just go with them or we can struggle against them, and whatever that means. That could be religious or spiritual or ethical or moral or however you want to quantify those things. I'm a sober guy. I don't drink alcohol. I don't take drugs. I put no moral judgment on anyone who does. If left to my own devices and I just was acting on every instinct, my life would go in a direction I didn't want it to. So like the first week of counting macros felt like doing advanced algebra.
Yeah.
It was so hard. And now on maintenance, I can do it without writing anything down, and I know I'm staying within the boundaries.
Yeah.
It's really like how my meal is composed. And if I have a little bit too much chicken breast, or my cup of rice, which I can pretty much eyeball, is actually a cup and an eighth, it's not going to throw me off too bad.
Yeah. Something you're saying, I think, is so huge for people when they're figuring out diets and food and what they're going to eat, is just to treat your body like a science experiment.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people there is that fear of like you were talking about that week when you introduced carbs, and you were just seeing that, and a lot of people are like, nope, I'm done. But it's kind of like allow the data to be data.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I feel this way when I do this. When I eat this much, this happens. And like being able to kind of experiment and be okay with the experiment. And another thing you were talking about was like the 8-week periods of like maintenance. Like a lot of people, I think they're afraid of if they don't see the immediate results, then they freak out or they make another decision or they go drastic. And when you can space out something like an 8-week period, you might have a spike, but then you'll realize like the average is pretty level.
Yeah.
Either trending up, trending down, staying the same. And so I think a lot of what you're saying is like good for people who are listening, in the fact of just like it's literally a science experiment. It's with this input, what is my output? Okay, now let me adjust. I think it's super crucial.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that I don't think that everybody has to count calories forever.
Yeah.
that's no way to live. But I think that anybody could benefit from spending a week and not even changing their diet at all and just diligently counting everything. And I'm talking about like a splash of ketchup on something. Just count it. You can figure it out. It's not that hard. It's going to be a really rough day or two, and you're going to be like, this is such a crazy waste of time. But I just think, and I only say this because this was my experience, I had no idea what a day's worth of food looked like. By the way, going from keto to low fat, my volume of food more than doubled. And I was like, this is insanity that they want me to eat this much. It's insanity, you know? And now when I look at oil, I'm like, I don't want that. What, I get 1 tablespoon or a half a cup of rice? I'd rather have a half a cup of rice every time.
Yeah, I think that I've always said that tracking is no way to live for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like I like imagine 70 years old trying to track your rice, like no, right? But you know, going 6 months, maybe even if you want to get crazy, like go a year tracking your food. It doesn't even have to be that long at all, but track your food for that amount of time, because knowledge is power, man. And especially when it comes to like weight loss, but not even just weight loss, but just general health and understanding the amount of calories and things like fats and or oils, and like the amount of calories that'll be in that versus, you know, rice or maybe doing some vegetables or whatever it is that you do instead of that. It's huge, man. Or like dressings, or like one big thing I could not believe how many calories were in was syrup. I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many. Or like a dressing,
it's like plutonium.
It's ridiculous. It's like so high. Or like some dressings, I remember I used to hear when I was a kid, like, oh, that salad has more calories than that burger. And I'd be like, no, it doesn't. You're crazy. It's like, if you put as much ranch on there as you want to, it will be.
Yeah.
You know, and all those little things add up. Like for me, I don't like say it, by no means am I some sort of expert, right? I'm a guy that lost weight, that I really do think I found a way that can make it sustainable. And that's the most important thing. And I think that's what's so cool about your story, because I know we kind of talked about this a little bit. I think it was either on your podcast or our fake mini podcast that I did that you didn't know you were on, where we were talking about how, you know, before I think it was 2011 when you lost the weight, you were kind of silent about it. You didn't really talk about it very much. And I mean, I guess to some effect, even this weight loss, you didn't really talk much about it, or at least I didn't hear much about it until like that post went like super viral.
It went crazy.
It went crazy viral. I mean, that's how I first heard about it. I never knew you lost weight before. Like I didn't even know, right? So I mean, that's kind of, you succeeded in that. Right? Like
after my very brief experiences, I was out. I was not talking about
and
it.
So, but I think it's so cool. Like you have this podcast, and I mean, almost your whole online persona right now is about the fact that you lost the weight. And what I love about what you're doing is and I try and do it to some effect as well, is like, I don't try and act like I am the guy with all the answers. Like, I have the answers of what worked for me, and I'll share that with you if you want to know. But I'm not going to sit here and say what you're doing is stupid, or you're dumb for doing that, or this is the only way to do it. And I think, like, you having these conversations with people, it's just, one, it's obviously helping a lot of people, but I can only imagine it's, like, for you, it's like you have all of these people that are going to, like, keep you accountable. Yeah. Right? So do you feel like it's kind of been like that?
That's a huge part of it, yeah. Yeah, the podcast and the way this all happened, which I was not expecting. My buddy Kevin Connolly opened a podcast studio.
It's beautiful. I was there.
It's awesome. Nice. Yeah, and me and Kevin and our group of friends argue about mostly political and philosophical things. And Kevin said to me, like, I need you to be one of my first podcast at my studio. Come to a podcast. And I was like, what the heck am I going to talk about? And he said, politics. And I said, there's no way, like, anything I've said to you, like, if you want the truth, I think politics is less real than professional wrestling. Like, I think there's more validity in professional wrestling than there is in politics. And I'm not a fan of professional wrestling, but, like, I really think it's like WWE versus WWF. Which side are you on? And it's like, you guys are going to actually be mad at each other because this guy likes WWE and that guy likes it's the same. It's all garbage. And Kevin was like, no, come do it. And I was like, no, I'm done. Like any shot I have at being in Hollywood and saying stuff like
you're
that,
just opening
I'm
yourself
done.
up for being
There's
canceled
no
or
way.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he kept kind of going like, no, because you argue about this so well. And I just said, like, finally I said, hey, Kevin, I work out every day. I diet like a maniac. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'll talk about that, and I'm actually interested in, and suddenly started getting excited, like, I read Mike Israetel's book. Maybe he'd be on my podcast. Like, I have no other way of having a conversation with that dude, or Lane Norton, or, Spencer. Like, these guys who I admire so much, I have no contact with them. And so it was a little bit like I could talk to a bodybuilder. I don't know a bodybuilder. I'm just kind of putting it together through these books I've read. And Kevin was like, that's boring. But it's worked. So we released this podcast. I started taking pictures of myself at the gym, and it went nuts. Like much crazier than I ever thought it would get. And I've gotten to talk to all these people, and it's been amazing. And it has been a primary focus of mine for almost 20 years. So, and like you were saying, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian. I'll tell you my experience, and I'm super interested in your experience, and I'm super interested in like what people have done and what works for them.
I mean, it's very obvious, right? Like you can't fake that genuineness that like I hear in the podcast that you do with people. I just think like, I mean, obviously I believe you made the right choice because again, like you are obviously so interested, and like as much as maybe you don't like to hear is like you're inspiring to a lot of people. You just are, right? Like for a lot of people, you are the big guy they know.
Yeah.
Like in movies, right? You just are. And then seeing that guy is no longer the big guy anymore, you just help people believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just so awesome, man. And like you have this podcast and you're just, it's just crazy how supportive the people that listen to your podcast are. Because like I recently put out a little poll on my Instagram. I was like, how'd you find me? So many people were like from your podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
That's awesome.
It was crazy. And like people, when I posted that you were going to be on it, they were super excited.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was definitely the most, like my most favorite podcast I ever did, because again, it's like, we are so interested in very similar things, but our lives are so different. It's a lot of fun. I mean, this has been a really fun podcast as well.
Yeah.
Like I never would have thought, like I remember when I first saw your transformation, I put it on my story and I was like, I don't know if this is real, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because for me, it was like, this is the guy from Remember the Titans. That was a really great movie. I remember I loved his character because I was like, that's me, right?
Yeah.
And then seeing the transformation, I was like, I don't know if it's real, but it's awesome. And then a ton of people like sent me your Instagram like, no, it's real. And I was like, that's cool. I didn't think we would ever have a conversation. I was like, that's awesome. Happy for him. That's great. And the fact that like all these things have like gone into place, like it's really cool, man.
Yeah.
And I'm super thankful like for our friendship, and Jean, you're going to be in there sometime. I promise.
Yeah. Well, like a couple more of these, and then you'll be right there.
Can I tell people
you
we're
got to come
friends
to
yet?
LA now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to drive up to LA.
Yeah.
We've driven to each other.
Yeah,
That's why we're
that's
That's
what it is.
that's the barometer for
Yeah.
Just like drive up to LA and like try to DM you like,
hey man,
I'm here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna leave this guy on red watch.
Yeah. I never thought of myself as like a guy who was in a place, and because I was allowing others to feel more comfortable or confident. I never thought that, but I have gotten a number of messages saying like, you made me feel so good about myself as a kid, and now this gives me hope. And that is truly enough to stay accountable. You know what I mean? Like, I have my goals, and then there's this idea that I have anybody else who's maybe depending on me for anything, and I feel like that's it. That's the whole game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like for me, having this, the platforms that I have, it's not like it's this thought that I ever really think. I'm not thinking like when I'm working, like I have to do this for my followers.
Yeah.
But it's without a doubt, all of the positive comments I receive, all of like just people messaging me every day being like, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. Of course, it makes it easier to be accountable. Like
Yeah.
it just does. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's probably the same for you.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have hated working out at my house every day for the past 3 months. But I really was like, I'm not going to come out of this having gained 10 pounds. Like, that's not what, I can work out, you know? I know how to work out. Like, get over it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I could say that.
You're just, you're accruing mass, so you can be stronger.
My comeback is going to be...
You're
it's
now a
for
coach,
the comeback.
Yeah,
so you don't ever have to work out again.
I know,
Yeah,
exactly.
He just walks around rubbing his belly. He's all right, guys, good job.
Yeah, squat deeper.
I would never
Just
squat like
no
that.
repping ever.
Yeah.
I'm doing a burpee. No rep. Doesn't count.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks
dude.
for having
We
me.
can sit here and talk forever, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
we've been here for a while.
I want to say, like just an addendum if anybody wants to look for this or anybody wants to count calories. I spent my first week going through Calorie King, and it was really, really complicated. But there are 3 apps. MyFitnessPal, RP has an app, and Carbon, Lane Norton has a new app. Any of those apps, and I think there are free versions of them, will do all the math for you. You just write what you're eating. They can scan barcodes. So, like, it has become really easy to count calories. And I'm not saying do that forever, but, like, take a week and see what you're eating. Because I was shocked,
yeah.
you know? So anybody can do that.
Yeah, big fans of MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
I haven't used
Yeah.
the other ones yet. I knew what RP Strength made one. I was, like, interested in it.
Yeah.
By that point, I was way beyond. I was way... Not beyond counting calories. I was just over it.
Yeah. I mean, I tracked for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And I used MyFitnessPal that whole time.
Yeah. They're all great, and what a tool. I mean, can you imagine? Like, Calorie King, also a dope tool.
Great tool, yeah.
When it came out.
Yeah.
And now they've gone, like, you don't even have to, like, go through, like, the first Calorie King I had was a paperback book, you know? Now it's all online, and now there's an app that you just, like, write in a word, and I mean, it's wild how efficient this stuff has gotten.
Yeah. Awesome, dude.
Cool.
Cool.
All right,
Thanks
thanks, man.
again for
Thank
being
you.
on.